Hello and welcome to the Surgical Spirit podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Haidar Al-Hakim, the Third Eye Doctor. Pull up a chair and get ready for some candid and uncompromising discussion with experts, innovators, agitators, and influential people from every corner of health and well-being. From inside the hospital to at home in the kitchen, we're leaving no stone unturned in our quest to uncover the secrets of healthier, happier, more successful, and less stressful lives. Thank you so much for joining us, and without further ado, let's meet this episode's guest.
Hello, Paul. How are you, sir?
I'm very well, thanks, Haidar. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm very well. It's a real pleasure having you on today, and I hope you don't mind me saying this. It's going to be half a century soon.
It certainly is. I think I'm just over 18 weeks away.
Wow. And it's gone so quickly, would you say?
Incredibly so. Yeah, it just seems like, well, in fact, it does just seem like yesterday where 16-year-old Paul, made his debut for Crystal Palace. It's a lifetime ago now.
Tell me more about that.
Well, when I was young, obviously I was a 70s child, born in 69, and growing up through the 70s and into the 80s, we had none of this wonderful technology or stuff that we enjoy today as a matter of course. And in many ways, our leisure activities were just that. They were leisure activities. So we'd go out and we'd play. We didn't have to go on play dates. We could just jump on our bikes and go, shout to our parents to see you later. And, off we'd go, and we'd go and meet friends and go down to the park. And football was the game of choice. Every kid that I knew, including me, wanted to be a professional footballer. We played non-stop. I played actually more than most. I was kind of obsessed a little bit, but it was my outlet. It was how I expressed myself. I had a lot of energy. I boxed as well, but you only went once or twice a week, whereas the football I could go every day. So it was a great outlet for me, a great way of expressing myself. And I was actually reasonably good at it. I had some skills. I noticed that from an early age. So I grew up wanting to be this professional footballer. And it became, I guess, as the phrase I use these days, my magnificent obsession. So I obsessed about it. I thought about it all the time. I play-acted scenarios in my garden, in the alley, out the back of the house, down the park. I organised my friends into games. I was the one that said, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to play defence against attack. I'm going to go in goal. You're going to do this. And it became, people, my friends and my family just really, I think, got fed up with me doing it in the end. They said, can't you do something else? But to me, this was all there was. Now I understand how mastery works and how deliberate practice is undertaken to make people better at what they do. We understand the science behind that now, but back then it was I just wanted to play it. So I did all my schooling life from primary school through senior school.
You were in South London, were you?
I was in South London, yeah. So I'm a Battersea boy by trade, but actually I went to school in Crystal Palace. So as I went through school, I started going to... Now, football then wasn't like what it is now. We're talking about early 80s, so very much pre-Premier League. Clubs didn't have academies. They didn't have specific coaches. It was a very, very different game, very different setup. So, but they did have kind of centres of excellence dotted around the country. So I was going to a Crystal Palace centre of excellence one night. I was going to a Wimbledon centre of excellence another night. I was going to a Southampton centre of excellence another night. And all three clubs were interested in signing me as a schoolboy, first of all, and then an apprentice professional. And to be fair, I really wanted to go to Southampton because at the time, Peter Shilton, who was the England goalkeeper, was in goal. And my dad said, look, if you go to Southampton, you're going to have to leave home. You're going to have to live in digs. You'll be on your own. There's a lot of downtime as a footballer, et cetera, et cetera. So why don't you pick Palace or Wimbledon? They're much closer. You can stay at home. It will be easier. I can run you round. It's no trouble. So in the end, I decided on Crystal Palace. Only because I had played more schoolboy games for them, so I knew the players. And I'd actually had been granted 1 day off a week from school in my exam year, crazily enough, to go and train with Crystal Palace, the actual first team and reserve teams. So I was taking a Thursday, I think it was, off of school and going to the training ground in Mitcham and actually being a professional footballer, if you like.
This was O-levels, was it?
This is when I was taking my O-levels, yeah. So I'm not sure how Palace, my father and my parents actually, and the school came to that arrangement, but it worked. I was offered apprentice professional terms. I took them, and so I became that footballer. I became that 16-year-old who actually was living the dream. And I progressed rapidly. I was given a pro contract after a year. I was training with the first team in pre-season, playing first team games. It was going really, really well. And then I did what happens to quite a lot of young kids when they play a lot of sport. I got an injury. And
what did they see in you that they gave you a contract so quickly?
I think it was a couple of things. One, I'm not going to say I was the best goalkeeper around. I was decent. I would say I was unspectacular. So I was a safe, consistent goalkeeper. So I had good hands. Back then, we didn't really use our feet as much as keepers today do. So, some of your listeners might have heard of the sweeper keeper, where keepers play the ball out with their feet now. Didn't do that in when I played. We could still pick the ball up when defenders passed it back to us, for instance.
Yeah.
So we used our hands a lot more. So I had very dependable hands, as they say in the trade. I was quite dominant in the air, so I used to come and catch crosses, and my positioning was very, very good. So I was quite smart, and I never was one for really spectacular saves, although there were one or two. But because of my positioning ability and the way I read a game, I was able to get into good positions to make saves look regulation, which for me was great because because they were regulation, I was able to do them time after time after time. So I was quite a dependable goalkeeper, quite strong, quite explosive, very fit, confident, aggressive. So I think they just saw that in me and saw that I was progressing really fast. A lot of these kids, when they become footballers, even back then, much more so today, they allow the ego to drive the desire, if you like. So they believe the hype, and rather than knuckle down and do the work. Is
that from the clubs or from the people around them, or?
Well, I think it's a combination of all things. I read today, funnily enough, incredible, Chelsea, which is the team I supported as a boy, support now. Yeah, come on. Have a player you may know is in the World Cup squad, Ruben Loftus-Cheek. Undoubtedly a talented player. Spent last year on loan at Crystal Palace. Now, I know people in the game still, and I know a little bit about this inside. I won't divulge too much information, but I know he's on a big salary at Chelsea. He's only young. He's getting a lot of money. And the whisper is that he isn't quite prepared to knuckle down and do the work. Right? Now, I don't know this kid. I don't know if this is true, but this is what I'm told. And I read today that, he wants to now go out on loan again because, in the words of his manager, he's not prepared to stay and fight to win his place in the team. And, I look at that and I think, well, what is it that is making his decision for him? Why doesn't he want to stay? An undoubtedly world-class footballer, who's been in the World Cup semi-final squad, why can't he stay and fight for his place? What's going on in his mind? And, that's kind of the difference. I never had that mentality. For me, it was all about, right, let's fight for this. Let's prove my worth. Let's just get on with this and do it. This is what I've chosen to do, so I'm going to do it to the best of my ability.
So then how did the injury happen?
I was messing around. It was I was a goalkeeper, and I was messing around with Wright, who was sent forward at Palace at the time, and he wanted to take some penalties. I said I'd go and goal for them. He was whacking the ball into the back of the net. I was saving a couple. He was scoring some more, and then one came straight at me. Now, in those days, the footballs were a little bit heavier than they are now, and all they didn't move in the air like they do now, but they used to dip sometimes. So if a ball was coming straight at you, you just didn't know when that dip was going to happen. It might not happen. It might happen early. Or in this instance, it happened right at the last moment. And as I went to catch it in front of my face, the ball dipped and caught me on the top of the thumb and exploded the thumb joint on my right hand. It basically tore all the ligaments, all the tendons, dislocated the joint. I had to have it surgically rebuilt. I had to have pins put in. It took me about a year for all the pins to come out and everything to strengthen up again. But, every time the ball hit my hand at the wrong angle, the thumb would dislocate. So I just couldn't play at that level anymore, because you have to, you have to train every day. You have to, not have a dislocating joint. So that was the end of it, really.
And there was no support structure, so to speak?
None whatsoever, no. It was brutal. It was brutal. And, I saw so many kids coming into football from all sorts of backgrounds, all sorts of areas, with all sorts of talent. And for whatever reason, injury, burnout, just didn't make it for whatever reason, they were just tossed aside. It was brutal. It was like, I remember being taken into the office by the manager, who was Steve Coppell at the time. And now, Coppell, he was a nice enough guy. He was my boss. He was quite hard. And his career had been cut short by injury. So if you would have thought that if anyone understood what it's like to have a long-term injury, it would be Steve Coppell, right? But all the time I was injured, he never said a word to me. Basically, you were injured, you were out of the equation. You might as well have not been there. And I remember being taken to the office. I remember he didn't even tell me to sit down. He sat down, I was standing up, and he said, we're not going to renew your contract. Leave your blazer in the dressing room and get your boots and go. That was it. It wasn't a thank you. There wasn't like, I'm really sorry, we're going to have to do this. There was nothing. It was just like, your contract's not being renewed. Leave your blazer. I remember saying, leave your club blazer and get your boots and your gloves, and away you go.
What were you thinking then at that moment?
Well, I knew I couldn't do it anymore because of the severity of the injury. I knew that. And what I was just, I don't really remember what I was actually looking for. When he come and got me, and they never call you Paul. Everyone called me Webby at the time. So he would come out and go, Webby, I need to see you. Come into the office.
As in Webby hands. You got nice big Webby hands.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. But I knew that this was going to be the conversation. I knew that it wasn't going to be, we're going to give you another year, see if you can. Because I knew I'd seen many occasions where kids had just been dismissed. So I knew what was coming. But I kind of thought that, he would have, said, how you doing? How's it going? How do you feel about it? I would have thought there'd been a dialogue, right? And there wasn't. There was just a case, okay, well, this is what we're going to do. Leave your stuff, go and pick up your shit, get out, away you go. And it was before training. I remember it was before a training session. And I remember saying, you want me to go after training today? He said, no, I want you to go now. So I had to go and pick up everything and walk out. All the players were getting changed. I mean, that's brutal.
That's fucked up.
Yeah, that's so harsh. And I think that, fortunately, I come from a background, the council estate background, quite, straight-laced, quite call it as it is. So I've kind of got that attitude. So I was able to hold my head up and walk out. And, but it was tearing me apart inside. It really was that I'd spent my whole life up to that point, up to 19, 20 years old, with one goal in mind, and now I was able to walk away from it. I was being told to walk away from it, in no uncertain terms. And there was no, the FA had or the PFA had no real structure in place. There was nothing. I got a letter from Alan Smith, who was one of the coaches there, who went on to manage Palace, basically saying, really sorry you had to go, it had to end this way. If I can ever do anything for you, let me know. That was basically the only thing I got from that time. It was an end like that, and that was it.
And has that changed since the football?
Well, the football's changed dramatically. As I say, a lot of these kids now go into academies at 9 years old, so they're looked after by the clubs. The clubs invest money in them, they educate them, but still, it can be quite a brutal sport in terms of, when they let players go. I know a kid, a friend of mine's got a son who's now 14. I think when he was 11, he was at, I'm going to say Tottenham. I think it was Tottenham. And basically, he was quite a late developer. And we're talking about an 11, 12-year-old boy here. He was quite a late developer, and they effectively turned around to him and said, "We don't think you're good enough. You've got to go. We don't want you here anymore." So it's an 11, 12-year-old boy. They're just basically telling him to go forth and multiply, and it really, really upset him. And it's taken him. He's now 14, so it's taken him 3 years. And I've seen him play. He's a decent little kid. It's taken him all this time to kind of get back to a place where he's starting to now get the attention of clubs again. And he's shot up, and he's much bigger. He's much more physical, and we all develop at different rates. And back then in the old days when I played, if you like, you had really 2 years between 16 and 18, and if you hadn't developed and they didn't think you were physically strong enough, you were gone. You were gone, and that was it. And I know so many kids that were so talented, but they just weren't physical enough, that were released. That if they'd have had sort of the European model where these kids are kept till 21, and they become men, it would have been so very much different.
Mm-hmm. Where did that come from? That sort of method of work for them?
I think it's just football's one of these industries. Even today, when because I went on and from out of the ashes of that despair, I reinvented myself as a strength coach. So I did a lot of work with athletes from all different types of sports, and football is unique in and of itself. It really is a completely different sporting industry to anything else. And you can work with athletes in cricket, in rugby, in swimming, in track and field, in hockey, in American football, basketball. It doesn't matter. Football stands on its own, completely unique. And football is the mantra of football is, we've always done it this way, therefore we're always going to do it that way. And it took Sky Sports and the money that they brought into the industry, and the tragedies that happened around Hillsborough and Hazel and all this kind of stuff, to really force football to look at itself and change when they didn't really want to. And it's kind of the pendulum has swung the other way. So you had this era of football from the 1900s all the way through that century into about 92, 93 when the Premier League started. And that's the start of modern football, right? And it's grown since then. And the pendulum's now swung the other way when there's phenomenal amounts of money being thrown at the sport. Players are earning £300,000, £400,000, £500,000 a week, plus their sponsorships, plus their image rights. They're in control of the industry for the first time ever, not the employers, it's the employees. It's just unbelievable how it's changed.
Does it help the players?
Well, I look at some of them. We spoke of Loftus-Cheek earlier, who I know is on a very big salary at Chelsea, and he was on. For
the majority of players, would you say, has it helped them? Looking through all the different leagues and levels. Well,
I think in some circumstances, definitely, because obviously, you can go down the leagues now, and whereas years ago you would get players in the top division earning £1,000 a week, and that would be the most they would get paid. You get non-league now. So these the money does filter down a little bit, and you get lesser footballers able to earn a decent living salary, if you like. So I think in that regard, it probably has helped, and there are a lot more policies in place. The players get educated through the clubs. You have programs in place should players have to retire through injury and stuff like that. There's a lot more processes in place now where there wasn't. So I think that
it's a lot more humane.
It's a lot more humane, and it's a lot more suitable for those that don't quite make it. Yeah, but for those that do make it, it's the riches are beyond riches, if you like.
I mean, we'll come to those because as you said, that they have other issues, more sort of mind and metaphysical issues rather than the materialistic ones. So strength strength coach. That was the next transition for you.
It was. So I did a lot of thinking around about this time, especially when I was injured. Because I knew it was a long-term injury. I know I may struggle to get back. So I was having to think about, well, what happens if. And I've always been interested in performance, right? So physical performance, mental performance, even spiritual performance to a degree back then, although it's become a lot more part of me now. But so I was looking at this, and I guess I was fortunate because my cousin was in the 70s British powerlifting champion. So he was a bit of a family hero, big, huge guy, long hair, tattoos, rode a Harley Davidson, badass, right? So when he used to roll up on his Harley, we used to go, "Whoa, it's Kevin," And so he when I realised that I was decent at sport, he was the one I went to see and said, "Okay, what do I need to do in the gym? How can I train to help this?" And the advice he gave me back then, I look back now with all my experience and think that's really good advice. Wow. That's really good advice. He was really good. He steered me very, very well. So I spoke to him after and said, "Look, I really." We were talking and he said, "What are you going to do?" And I said, "Well, I like the idea of being involved in coaching somehow. I like the idea of helping. I like the idea of, if I can't be a professional athlete, I'd like to help professional athletes in some way. I want to be in that industry." And he said, "Look, the best thing to do is probably go to America. They have like strength and conditioning coaches there, which they don't have over here, which didn't have a fitness industry over here back then, And he said, you can learn, you can intern, because he trained it all over the States and competed all over the States. He said, and you'll get an education and you'll get, good grounding, and you'll be able to help your athletes and do it that way. And then you'll be able to train as well and do what you really love doing." So that's kind of the advice I took. And I went on this sort of quest to learn from those that were doing it in America, and it was a great time. And it was the old school way of doing it, where you turned up and said, "Right, teach me what you know," and they said, "There's a broom, go and sweep the gym," and it was kind of that way. And you say, "Yeah, fine, go, I can't do it." People won't do that now. When I had my own facility, 10 or so years ago, I had kids come in to do my strength camp for kids. And I used to tell them these stories, that I would sweep up, I'd put the weights away, I'd wipe the sweaty gym equipment down, way before I was allowed to talk to the coaches about what they were doing. And these kids were like, "Well, I'd never do that." And I'm like, well, then you're going to have a problem in life, because you want it all handed to you. You're not prepared to dig and grind and do the work, because, there isn't a work element to everything. You want to learn something, you want to do something new, you want to change the way you think, you want to change your life, you want to have a new relationship, you want to get fitter. There's a work component to it. And sometimes that work isn't pretty. Sometimes that work hurts. Sometimes it gets monotonous and dull, but you have to do the work. Otherwise it just doesn't work. And I think today, maybe going slightly off topic, but I think that's a huge issue today when we live in this have it now society where everything's available at the click of a button. I want fame. I want it now. I want this. I want it now. I don't want to do the work. I want to compress time. I want it now. It just doesn't work like that.
And there's lots of charlatans and people that just
play on that. Absolutely. And I feel so sorry, in the industry I'm in now, or in any industry, when you prey on people's fears around, around stuff like, I understand you're overweight. I understand that you're unhealthy. I can get you in shape in 12 weeks if you sign up for this $5,000 program. Let's go. What are you waiting for? Why don't you want to do it? Why aren't you serious? And it's just like, whoa, hold on a second. Let's just have a minute here,
Yeah. What was the most boring thing you were forced to do during your career as a strength coach? You think, this is just too much for me, even for my consistency and my hard knuckles?
Wow, good question. There was quite a bit. I think just cleaning the gym and also writing the programs up on the board. So a lot of these strength gyms have big whiteboards, which is kind of a concept I brought into my gym at the time, and when I came back to the UK. And what you used to have to do is to go in the morning, you have to write up all the programs for the day for all the athletes. And sometimes there'd be like 200 athletes coming in the day. You didn't put up 200 different programs because you had athletes on certain programs at certain stages of their plan or periodization, and you'd write it up on the board. So you'd write 20 or 30 different programs up, but you do that every day, and you'd write it up, and after you come away from the board, it was slanted, and you have to rub it off and write it out again, and that was really tedious. To be fair.
And when did you say enough is enough? I'm not doing this anymore.
When I had a good knowledge of what I needed to, and then came back to the UK, and I was going backwards and forwards. It wasn't that I was out there all the time, and I decided to do it for myself. That was when I thought, right, well, I'm doing this now. I'm in someone's gym. I'm delivering workouts. I'm writing programs. I'm getting results. But fundamentally, I'm being paid a wage here. I could be doing this myself and, be the one that earns all the money. So that's basically what drove me to change that.
And what was the trigger for that?
Do you know what? It was a couple of things. It was just I'd had kids, so I'd had kids quite young. I wasn't with the mother of them anymore, but they were babies, and I wanted to earn more money. So that was one trigger. And the other trigger was I met my then, now my ex-wife, because we're divorced sadly, but when I met Lisa, she was very driven. She was, she had a really high-powered job, and I helped her with a couple of health issues she had, hormonal stuff that I was very good at. I was studying a lot of endocrinology at the time because obviously I started doing a lot more fat loss programs. So that was a new thing about, 20 years ago. So I helped her with a couple of bits, and she got better quite quickly and said, you know what, you need to do this properly. You need to stop fucking about. You need to stop playing as a hobby, get your own facility, even if it's only a small place, and do this full time. So that kind of was the catalyst for that, if you like.
So it's the coach having a coach. Yeah,
effectively, which I think is vital, and again, which many coaches this day and age don't see.
Yeah, I mean, all of the billionaires and these sort of successful people in the world have coaches. No matter where you are, you need someone else to look at you from a different perspective.
Yeah, and as you say, it's perspective, right? How many people are so aware these days that they can objectively sit back and observe what they're doing? There's not many, right? There's just not many people that have that level of awareness. So, why wouldn't you get someone in who can do that objectively and say, just steer this way a little bit,
Yeah. I mean, ministers and presidents and kings and princes all have advisors and coaches and mentors and people to advise them on what the next step is, and it just makes sense. It makes absolute sense. And
well, it makes perfect sense, and I hear you absolutely, because I spent some time in Riyadh earlier this year working with some members of the royal family, so I know that people of that level have coaches. I know that they take on board observations and critiques as well. It takes a certain type of person to be able to do that, I think. A lot of people don't like to be told they're doing something wrong. They don't like to be criticised, even if it's, constructive. They just don't like it.
Yeah. And, these are people that stagnate and have all kinds of
definitely
massive issues.
I went through a phase where I used to speak at events when I'd go on stage and ask how many people believed in the power of coaching. And all the hands would go up because generally they were coaches or speakers or some people of that ilk. And then I'd follow that up with how many of you have got coaches currently? And hardly any hands went up. And I said, well, can you see the disconnect here? You all believe in the power of coaching. You sell it every single day, and yet you're not prepared to invest in your own coach. What's going on? What's the matter?
I mean, why do you think that is?
I think because I think it could be a lot of reasons. I think that speaking from the industries I've worked in and continue to work in these days, a lot of coaches have this insular belief that if they refer clients to other professionals, they lose the client or they lose face in front of this client. So they don't see. I got taught very early on to have a Rolodex of professionals that I could refer clients to, because I was told that, look, specialize in one thing. Be really, really good at one thing. It takes you years to become world class at one thing. So don't try and do multiple things. Become good at one thing. Right? You can branch out into different areas of that. So if I was really, really good at performance and getting people to perform better, right, I could look at endocrinology. I could look at physiology. I could look at nutrition. I could look at recovery. But fundamentally, it was all based around this performance. I'm going to get you to perform better. What most people fail to do now is that they try and be master of all trades to everyone. So when I used to get clients into the gym, I would hire a nutritionist. Even though I knew nutrition, right, I would hire a nutritionist because it was one less thing I had to worry about. I used to hire coaches to take clients through warm-ups. I used to hire physiotherapists and osteopaths, right? I had physicians, if athletes, because I was dealing with a lot of athletes at that time, and they were looking after themselves like a lot of these track athletes were. If they got injured, I had physicians I could send them to, surgeons. So go and see this guy, he's the best knee surgeon in Europe, right? I was never afraid to do that. But these days, coaches, especially in the fitness industry, especially in the self-help industry, which are two areas that I'm involved in, they are very much like, well, I know everything. You don't have to go to anyone else. I'm not going to refer you because I'll lose you. And it's such a backwards arts way of looking at things that actually, when you refer to people, you say, I've got this guy, he's brilliant, go and see him, he'll sort you out. That endears the client more to you, and they realize that you are actually professional and have got their best interests in heart. And that's what it is all about at the end of the day.
Yeah. Who was your best strength coach in the US when you were training? Who really shone in your eyes, and why?
Well, there are a couple of really good ones. I mean, Louis Simmons, who was famous for having Westside Barbell, which in the strength industry is like the mecca of strength in the US, in Columbus, Ohio. He churned out strength athlete after strength athlete after strength athlete. And in them days, if you wanted to get strong, that's where you went and trained. And all the top powerlifters, all the top weightlifters, all the top strength athletes went through his gym. He was very, very good at, very unorthodox in some ways. Complete nutcase, but knows how to get someone strong. If strength, absolute strength is your thing, and you want to get strong, you went and saw Louis. He wasn't the best at getting people shredded. He wasn't the best at working with health and well-being, but you wanted to get strong, that's where you went. There was another guy called Marty Gallagher, who's more of an author now. He also was extremely good in the strength industry, very understated. And one more was Dan John, who was extremely, extremely knowledgeable. Was a former track athlete, a field athlete, discus thrower, I think. He knows his stuff. He really does.
And what was it about them that really shone in your eyes?
One, they got results.
Yeah.
And two, they were able to take very complex science-backed issues, protocols, and make them really simple. So that kind of stuck with me that okay, so when I do my stuff, right, when I research the science, I then make it accessible. So that when I coach clients, I'm not saying, what we're going to do is we're going to lift your arm up and the coracobrachialis is going to flex your shoulder and blah, 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 blah. You're just not going to do that, right? That's just not what clients want to hear. They just want to hear, right, if we do this, what's going to happen is you can engage these muscles, you're going to feel it there. It's going to hurt after about 6 reps, but keep going for another couple and we're done, right? They just want to know what's in it for them, really.
Mm-hmm. Simple.
Yeah, very simple. Yeah.
So after strength, what happened after that? You sort of opened your
So I came back permanently, if you like, opened my own facility, and I had two things on my mind. Right, one, I wanted to help as many people as I could perform better in every area of their life. Right, so I was thinking at that time, physically, mentally, emotionally. Right, that was my thought about that. I wanted to have a place, a gym, which had, because I had been in some really good gyms that had really good communities in the States. They were like almost like locker room mentality, like that old dressing room thing that I really missed from my football days. I wanted to have that kind of gym, right? So I this was the foremost mindset of me. I come and set it up, and this is what we're going to do. So I had all these systems in place. which I knew worked because I trained athletes. And athletes are really good guinea pigs, because they'll do anything you say. If you just say, yeah, if you do this, it's going to make you stronger. Right, I mean, so they're really, really good. So I transitioned at that time more away from athletes. I still had athlete days in the gym. I still had athletes coming in, but more and more of the local community were coming in and getting involved. And to then win awards for the gym and the community and all that sort of thing was really pleasing to me. So that's kind of where that came from, that I wanted to have this place where people wanted to come, wanted to feel special, and wanted to work and get results. Because fundamentally I knew that there was this correlation between work and results.
And then what happened?
Well, the gym got really successful. I had to move to a bigger place. I then started doing lots more work on myself. I've been all throughout my life, I've been a big reader, a big studier, a big self-help junkie. Because performance was always my thing. I wanted to be the strongest I could be. I wanted to be the most focused I could be. I wanted to be pretty much in every area of my life. I wanted to do it properly. I didn't want to mess around with stuff that didn't have any interest to me. But those things that had interest to me, I wanted to look into and go deep and go deep and go deep and see where they led me. Just an insatiable desire to know things, to understand things. So I started looking more at the metaphysical and spiritual side of stuff around about 15 years ago. I got heavily involved in a lot of spiritual teaching around North America and Europe, and speaking at events and stuff around that kind of stuff.
What was the reason for that?
Well, the reason, there were a couple of things. So what happened was, when I set up the gym, everyone was getting results. However, I was thinking, okay, some people are getting better results than others, right? Why is that? So I had a good think about it, and I was talking to these people, and the people that were getting the really good results, and asking them questions about the way they approached things and what they did in their life that got them ready to train and all sorts of stuff. And then I'd speak to the ones that weren't quite getting as good results and say, okay, so what are you doing? What's going on? And I noticed this disparity in mindset, right? That was the first thing. So I started doing a lot of work on mindset and changing the way that I spoke, the language I used to people. I started to understand a bit more about human behavior and stuff like that, and how some people react to certain things and other people react to others. And what happened there, that was when I got my first real spike in results. So when I introduced mindset programs into my training programs, the results went quite high. So I thought, okay, this is really interesting, so I'm going to look more at this. So I was doing a lot more work around mindset and stuff, and that went on for a good couple of years. And then I started again, I was looking at the same sort of thing again. It didn't stagnate, but there were certain people that were still getting better results than others, and I wanted to know why. And effectively, it was a bit deeper. So it was the way that they showed up in the world, what they believed about themselves, the language they used, the stories that they tell themselves every single day. So it was a lot more esoteric. It was a lot deeper. So I started to look into that, and it got me into. So when I was young at school, the one subject I was really very good at was physics. I loved physics. I loved that whole thing about how the universe works, and that just thrilled me. And so I'd on and off read about quantum physics over the years. And doing this kind of work now, I got more involved in quantum mechanics again, and research around that area and why that is. And so I started to bring more lifestyle coaching in it as well. So I called it lifestyle coaching at the time, because I didn't want to call it spiritual, because I knew there were a few people there that would have that were uncomfortable around that sort of word. And one of my coaching protocols is meet people where they are. So you talk to people how they like to be talked to, you treat them how they like to be treated, you meet them where they are, you don't bring them to you, you go to them. It's a very successful way of coaching. And so by starting to delve more into the lifestyle stuff, things, okay, so tell me what your thoughts are around this. Why do you think that? How does that affect you? Why does that upset you? Why does that trigger you? Why is your ego getting involved? How can we, all this kind of stuff. And then thinking about how our thoughts can in some way interpret our reality and what we see around us and what we expect of ourselves. I was able to get another spike in results. So the two spiking results I really got, well, there were three. There was when I started and brought in the strength training, because no one was really doing strength training for normal people. They were just going to the gym and doing cardio and a little bit of weights. Yes. So when I brought in proper strength training to people, I had, 60-year-old female Asian women who had never trained in their lives deadlifting 100 kilos, with good technique, with good repetitions, and in shape. And those that had been diagnosed type 2 diabetics were, their sugar levels were dropping off, their insulin levels were returning to somewhere near normal, and they were getting healthy, So that was the first big spike. The second one was with mindset, and the third one was with more self or spirituality, if you like, which I then called lifestyle at the time.
What was it that sort of got the second spike, into mindset? I mean, you said you were interested in that. But what sort of got you?
Well, I was asked, actually, it was talking to athletes and people in the gym who were asking me questions about my own sport. So I would have a lot of kids come in. So around about this time, I was in my 30s, and I was getting kids of 18, 19, 20 coming. I say kids, young men and women coming into the gym. And we would talk about how sport had changed and how I did it and how they do it. And they were always asking me, well, why were you so determined? Why were you so obsessed? Why did you do this? And I was thinking about that quite a lot. And it was always because I had this mindset of, I never thought I couldn't do anything. When I was a young kid, I was called big-headed and flash, because every time someone asked me something, I'd say, yeah, I can do that. Even if I didn't know if I could do it or not, I would just assume I could do it. I never assumed I couldn't do anything. To me, that sounds ridiculous. Well, why would you say you can't do it? There are people out there doing it, so why can't I do it? That was kind of the attitude I had from a really young age. And I don't know whether I learned that. I don't know whether that was inbuilt. I don't know whether I'd seen it on a TV program or maybe read it in a book when I was a kid, because I used to spend so much time in the library. I was either playing football or reading, and I don't know where that came from, really, but that's why I kind of started to look more into that. Okay, so maybe the way I do it isn't the norm. Maybe the way most people do it is to say, oh, I'm not sure I can do that. Because I would always question it. If someone says to me, oh, I don't think I can do that, my first question is, okay, why is that? Why do you think you can't do it? Have you tried it before? Have you failed before? Tell me about that. Because a lot of times people just make assumptions based on no real relevance or research or any real life, stuff they've done in their life. Oh, I've never done that before, but I can't do it. I know I can't do it. Well, really? Is that true?
Yeah. I mean, it's so powerful when different generations get together and discuss different ways of working. It does create that disruption in our thought processes.
Yeah, and I'm a big believer in that old Zen proverb, that when the student is ready, the teacher appears. Because I believe that everyone that stands in front of you is both a student and a teacher. And if someone says something to you that triggers you, there's an opportunity for you to grow. So this person in front of you that's being obnoxious, that's cut you off at the traffic lights, that said something that's upset you, it's not about them, right? They're on their journey. They're giving whatever they can give, depending on where they are in their life and what they've learned and the lessons that they're going through. But here's the thing: you have that growth opportunity. If you've been triggered by it, if you're triggered by someone says, the opportunity is, okay, why is this triggering me? What can I learn from this? So you become the student, right? And then you observe it, you deal with it, you listen to your inner voice, you formulate a response, and you respond in kind, right? You've only got two responses. You can be right or you can be kind. If you try and be right, and you may very well, to your perspective, be right, but what you say then is that, okay, I'm right, you're wrong. So now you create this disparity, and then the argument starts. But if you say something in kindness, people feel validated. Even if they're being obnoxious or a dick, they feel validated, and you've been kind, and you've shown that you can grow, and then you become the teacher. So you've been the student and the teacher at the same time, and I think that's very powerful.
Definitely. Mindset is sort of so big now, something that it's become mainstream. And as you said, sort of slowly but surely, the sort of the spiritual side of things will become mainstream as well.
Yeah, I think so, and I think that it's all connected. I think that I think the next big thing that people are going to go through. So we go through phases, like you say, right? So we've gone through the fat loss phase in one industry. We went through the strength phase where everyone does strength training, and the kettlebells came along, and the Olympic lifting came along, and then mindset came rolling in, didn't it? And everyone's a mindset coach now, and I've coached loads of PTs in lifestyle kind of stuff, and they now have reinvented themselves as mindset coaches as well as PT coaches. So whether that's a good or a bad thing, I don't know. But the next thing that's going to happen, I can see it starting already, is this consciousness thing. People are going to start now looking at consciousness and asking, what is consciousness? How does it affect me? How can I use it? How will it impact me and the people I'm around, and sorts of things? That will be the next big thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very big, contentious area. So what's consciousness for you, Paul?
Whoa, that's a really good question. Do you know what I think?
We've only got a few minutes, Paul. I know.
I know. I mean, we could probably do an hour on consciousness alone. Consciousness for me is it's the universe experiencing itself in different forms, right? So everything, every life force, every life form in the universe has a level or a degree of consciousness, of awareness, right? And whether it's a dog barking at a postman, or whether it's two humans discussing the best way to transplant a liver, I don't know. But the driver behind it, the observer behind it, the watcher behind it, the watcher of the thinker of the thoughts is the consciousness experiencing itself. Right? So the whole, for me, driver of the universe. So this question is there life anywhere else in the universe? Yes, there is life everywhere, because consciousness is the one life. Consciousness is the thing that drives everything, right? And it experiences itself in this instance, in this 3D world, as individual humanness.
So, since you're a Star Wars fan, it means consciousness is the Force.
Kind of, yeah. And I think that's where, because I know George Lucas was really into Zen Buddhism and the Eastern philosophies, I think that's where he picked it from. I think he picked it from, Buddhist scripts, and I think he picked it from the Tao Te Ching and stuff like that. I think that's where he took it from, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very... that's why it's very popular, because it sort of touches all of us, that sort of special life force that we all can relate to. And I've always been involved in spirituality, and it's because it's a universal language. You don't need to say it. It's just there, and you can feel it.
Yeah, you can feel it, and you know that when you really connect with someone, you don't connect at the level of a human there. You're connecting at the level of source energy. Right? And you can call it what you want. You can call it consciousness, you can call it soul, you can call it spirit, you can call it God, you can call it the Tao. It doesn't matter. You can
call it Chelsea.
You can call it Chelsea, you can call it what you want, because the words are relevant. The first verse, first sentence of the Tao Te Ching, the Tao that can be named is not the Tao. Now, Lao Tzu, who wrote the Tao Te Ching apparently, or was involved in the Tao Te Ching, the Tao translates as the way. Right. So if you're thinking about 2,500, 3,000 years ago, Chinese philosophers talking about how the universe works, what's the way it works? Well, if you can name the way, you're not the way. It's nameless, it's formless, it's spirit. Right. So you can't name it. It's boundless, it's infinite. So where are we infinite? We're infinite in our thoughts. Okay, our thoughts are boundless. We can think anything. We can think we're flying. We can think we're spacemen. We can think we've got lightsabers and we're battling Darth Vader, right? We can think boundless and limitless. But here's the thing. What do we do with those thoughts? We put boundaries and limits on them. I mean, how crazy is that? You have this gift, this power, this connection to the universal unified field of information, this quantum field where all possibilities and probabilities exist at once. You dip in and out of that 7.8 times a second and take information with you and bring information back, and yet you want to limit that? How
Bonkers.
crazy is that?
And people say you're crazy, Paul.
I may very well be crazy, but tell me what I've just said doesn't interest you.
It does, of course it does. Being I was going to say limitless, but then even limitless is limiting.
In what way?
Just the word limitless.
Well, as I say, with Lao Tzu saying you wouldn't be able to put a word on it, right? If you could define it, you're putting a boundary on it. Yeah, I do agree with you. But you know, think about it this way.
But we are conditioned, you know. That's sort of, you know, that's the underlying issue.
Yeah, aren't we just? But you know, everything you see, everything you interact with in the world of humanity that's been created by us was once a thought. Someone had a thought. So think about the Wright brothers, right? December the 17th, 1903, Dayton, Ohio, near Kitty Hawk, the first heavy-than-air powered flight, right? Now, that's the first recorded flight by a heavy-than-air powered aircraft. And that's true in the physical world. But in the metaphysical world, in the world of the formless, the Wright brothers must have imagined that flight thousands of times because they wouldn't have been able to do it without the thought first. So the thinking of things becomes extremely important. Right? If you understood that what you think leads to the reality you see in front of you, right, you would get very, very careful about what you thought about. If you knew that what you said to yourself when you're sitting down in your chair or laying in your bed at night, those words and phrases that you use, and you know, sometimes we speak so badly to ourselves that if we heard anyone else speak like that to us, we'd give them a slap. Right? But yet we talk to ourselves like that. Oh, you're useless. What are you doing that for fuck's sake? You know, all that kind of stuff. You're fat, you're ugly, you're no good, you can't do this. And we tell ourselves this. And remember, we're dipping in and out of this information field all the time. We are energy beings, beings of light. We're made of atoms. What do atoms do? Well, electrons, they interact with light. Right? They absorb and reflect light. They're energy. They vibrate. They're shimmering, whirling vortexes of energy. That's what you're made up of. That's your true substance. Right? And this shimmies in and out of this information field, and you share information. And if you keep going and say I'm useless, you keep bringing back uselessness. So you have to be very, very careful of what you think of. You have to be very, very careful of what you focus on. You have to be very, very careful of what you say and what you write down and how you behave. It's all part of this grand majesty of consciousness. And if you get it right, then your world starts to change. And you can then discover opportunities that you once thought were shut for you.
And in terms of opportunities, did you see your opportunities change once you delved into the world of the quantum? Absolutely.
You see, opportunities are everywhere, right? We take in something like 400 billion bits of information a second into our subconscious mind, but consciously we can only deal with about 2 million, right? So there's a huge amount of information coming into our subconscious that we don't see. So we miss things because we're focused on the same thing every single day. You know, we have 60, 70,000 thoughts a day. 90% of them are the same as we had yesterday. And what are our thoughts? What are our emotions? What are our feelings? They're echoes of past behaviors and actions and results. So we're living in the past. We're an artifact of our previous thoughts, our previous feelings, our previous emotions. And we repeat it day after day after day. Well, what does that mean? You're just going to get the same thing. You're just going to get the same thing every single day. So until you go back to source and start changing the way you think, start asking yourself different questions, start taking different behaviors and actions, you're just going to get the same thing.
Now,
So going back in
yeah.
time and changing the way I thought about things was a catalyst to suddenly become more aware and see more of these opportunities. Suddenly you step back, you become the observer. Instead of the person that's reacting to everything around him and thinks everything's out of control, you step back, you become the seer, the watcher of the thoughts. And then you see the opportunities. But then you have to action them. You see these opportunities and you take action, right? You don't sit back and try and use the law of attraction to bring them to you. That's not how it works. You have to go get them.
And when did that happen for you? When did you see that realization happening for you?
About 10 years ago. About 10 years ago, I started to get more and more deep into this. I started to see things. See, what happened is the gym was running really well, but it was the same thing every day. I was really involved in every aspect of running it. I got too involved, if I'm honest. You know, when you're running a business, you put in systems and you have people work those systems. What I did, I made that mistake because I was the face of the business, because I was the one that got the really good results. Everyone wanted a bit of me in the gym, so I was there all the time. So I got injured. I tore I was messing around. I used to have a boxing ring in the gym as well. I was messing around with some heavyweights. Young, strong, fierce heavyweights. And we were just having a little spar, and one leant on me. And as I tried to wriggle out, I tore my MCL, or partially tore my MCL. And it was when I was recovering from that operation, and I started sitting down and reading, because I had to be off the joint for 4 weeks. I was in a brace. It was then I thought, I was 37, 38 at the time, maybe even closer to 40. And I just thought, I don't want to be doing this for the next 20 years. I don't want to be going into the gym. I don't want to be doing the 16-hour days. I don't want to be missing the kids at school, all that kind of thing. And I'm too tired to go out with the wife on a date night. I'm not seeing my family. I'm not seeing my friends. All I do is work, work, work. And, I need to change. And that realization, I kind of made the decision there that somehow I was going to extract myself from it. I didn't know how I was going to do it. But I said to Lisa, okay, so this is what I'm planning on doing. And she said, okay, fine, whatever you want to do. And so I just had this desire, this thought that this was what was going to happen, that somehow, I don't know how, I was going to leave that up to the universe, right? I didn't need to know the how, but I was just going to focus on extracting myself in some way, shape or form. So I was looking for opportunities to get out of the gym. I spoke to the physio, so I ran a physio clinic in there, and the guy that ran it, I just spoke to him. He come to see me and have a look at the knee and that kind of thing. And I was just chatting to him about it. And he said, so what do you think you're going to do? And I said, I don't know. I'm just going to try and get out of it somehow. I don't know whether I'm going to have to liquidate the company, or I don't know whether I'm going to have to shut shop or whatever. I don't know yet, but I'm open to all possibilities. And he said, can you give me a week? And I said, yeah, whatever. And he came back a week later and said, right, I'm going to offer you this amount of money for the business. What do you reckon? I said, yeah, fine, let's do it. So he took the business off me, and that's how it worked. And that is when I knew that this, I remember sitting there and thinking, this shit really works. And then on we went from there. So that was when I thought, right, now I'm all in. This is what I'm going to live, breathe and teach, and boom, away we go. And so that's what's brought me right up to date today.
Wow. And if you can take us through the stages, that if someone wants change, and because there are a lot of doctors who are listening right now, and
right.
And the whole lives has been a passion or a desire becoming doctors and physicians and surgeons, right. And they've worked 20, 30, 40, 50 years, but they've reached a stage where it's not for them anymore.
Right, okay.
They need to change. They know they need to change, otherwise they'll just burn out and wither away and lose their true self. Could you sort of take us through that process? And they're people of performance. They're people that have been high-performing professionals and perfectionists all their lives.
Okay, the first thing I'd have them understand is that they are truly magnificent individuals who have done an absolutely sterling life's work dedicating your life in the service of others, I think, is the most altruistic and highest value thing you can do. So that's the first thing. So I want to honor them for that. And I want them to honor themselves for that as well. Because I think sometimes when we go through these stages or we start to burn out, we lose sense of that. And we're very, very good at not congratulating ourselves, at not patting ourselves on the back. Right. So I always want to take a moment out of my time to have people reflect on that. And secondly, I just get people into a state of quiet reflection. Right. So we need to lose. So you know what it's like when people are exposed to lots of stress. When you're exposed to lots of stress, your prefrontal cortex shuts down. You get flooded in your brain with stress hormones, and it shuts down your reasoning, your imagination, your intuition, your wit, and all sorts of stuff like that. So your ability to think creatively and make decisions are inhibited by this ancient fight or flight mechanism that's coursing through your veins, right? So that's the first thing. So we need to I take people out of that state and get them into a nice, relaxed, calm state. From there, I jump forward and I ask the question, where do you want to be? So if I'm dealing with someone in a relationship, if I'm dealing with someone in a profession, if I'm dealing with someone who's a sportsman, if I'm dealing with a member of the Riyadh royal family, the question is, where do you want to be? And it can be a year away, it can be 2 years away, it can be 10 years away, it doesn't matter, but where do you want to be? And when you can see that future self, describe it. But describe it in a full-on sensory experience. So tell me what it looks like, tell me what it feels like, tell me what it hears like, what clothes you're wearing, where are you at, who are you with, what does it taste like, what does it smell like? Have that full-blown experience about what it is you want, where you want to be. Right? And sometimes this can take 2 or 3 sessions to get to. But you need to come out of the state of stress and burnout and concern and worry, first of all. And from this place of relaxed, connection with self, you then decide where it is you want to be. And then what I want you to do is come back to now and then write it out. Because there's power in writing words on a piece of paper. Write that vision out. Get it out on paper in front of you so you can look at it, work it out. What does it look like? What's this life look like? And then try and take it a stage further. What does that mean you're doing every single day? What are you doing that's going to take you step to step? I mean, what will happen is you'll get this gap. So you'll have this idea, this vision, this mindset of where you're going and where you want to be. And you'll have this area where you are now, right? And there'll be this gap. And the question is, what do you do to fill that gap? So let's give you an example. Let's give you a weight loss example because it's the easiest one we can do. So let's say you want to lose 3 stone, right? Let's make it a little bit easier. Let's say you want to lose 30 pounds in 3 months, right? So in a state of total surrender and allowing, I look at what I look like 30 pounds lighter. I look at what I'm eating. I look at what I feel like. I look at how everyone is around me. I get that vision. I get really stoked and turned on by this vision of what it looks like. Okay. Then I bring it back to where I am now with no judgment. I need to know where I am now. Right. So I have this goal, right? 30 pounds, 3 months. So let's work backwards. So every month I've got to lose 10 pounds, right? So every week I've got to lose 2.5 pounds, which is about a kilo, right? So that's a kilo a week. So if I look at 30 pounds in 3 months, I might think, oh, that's quite tough. If I look at a kilo a week, I'm now thinking, oh, that's not too bad. I can do that. So what tools do I have to put in place in that gap to guarantee myself a kilo of weight loss every month? Nutrition, hydration, exercise. They're the 3 that most people pull out, right? Sleep, right? Sleep is vital when you're trying to lose weight, right? The ability to de-stress and recover is another one. Mindset is really very important, right? So now we have 7 things we can work on. So if we go deeper, we can certainly find out more stuff if we want. But environment, there's another one. Environment is everything. The environment if you're in an environment that promotes eating crap, get out of that environment. Clear the cupboards. Buy loads of fruit, get loads of water, loads of green foods, right? Loads of fish in it, whatever, but look at everything. Then you say, okay, what do I need to fill that gap with? I've got 8 things here. well, 7 things I can put in this gap. Okay? And you start to put them in and you start to tick them off every day. You don't have to do lots. It might be, okay, I'll drink 2 litres of water a day. I'm going to sleep an extra hour. I'm going to train 3 times a week. I'm going to eat 3-4 meals a day, and they're all going to be good quality with loads of green food in there. It's not difficult. It's not difficult. It's not simple because we make it difficult, but it really isn't that difficult. And then you just find a way to make it work.
It's that daily practice that you mention a lot.
Yeah. I'm big on deliberate practice, right? So deliberate practice is daily focused practice with intention, right? You can do daily work and not be involved in it. But if you're present, and here's the thing, if you're really present, that work becomes deliberate. And researchers like Anders Ericsson, who's the world's leading expert on expertise, has shown conclusively that it's the amount of focused practice you do, not necessarily how long you do it, but how long you can stay focused for whilst doing it, that makes the difference. So if you go to the gym, rather than just smashing through a workout, if you mindfully, presently lift every single repetition, and I know that sounds quite weird, what I mean is, instead of just throwing the weight around, that you actually take your time when you bring the weight in one way, and you take your time when you bring the weight the other, and you get in your mind into the muscles that are working, and you feel that stretch and you feel that contraction, and you do it, and you really get involved in that. It makes a massive difference, massive difference to the results you get.
I mean, something that's interesting that I just thought of now is can you fatigue the focus, or is there a way of strengthening that focus?
Well, look, my view on it is this, and nothing I've done so far in my life has led me away from this. And if it can be proved otherwise, I'm happy to look at it. But for me, everything is practice. Everything. Everything is a skill, right? You want to get better at making decisions? Well, guess what you do? You make more decisions. If you want to get better at speaking, you speak more. If you want to get better at writing, guess what you do? You write more. Everything is skill-based. The thing with skill is that old saying, practice makes perfect, for me is crap. What practice does is it makes permanent, right? So if you're practicing something and you're practicing it in the wrong way, you make the wrong way permanent, habitual. And it's very, very difficult to unwire those engrams, those neurological engrams, right? So what you do is you take, and this is where most people fall down, take some instruction, get someone who knows how to structure the practice or the skill or whatever it is you're doing to show you and coach you or explain to you how to perform this practice perfectly. Then build up your tolerance to it, because trying to hold focus for 3 hours a day when you can't for 3 seconds is very difficult, right? So you build it up bit by bit by bit. But yes, you can improve your ability to do it. You can get better at focus. You can get better at decision making. You can get better at pretty much everything you do, should you do it the right way.
So we can go on forever, really, if that's the if
well,
we keep going.
I certainly. It's a really interesting question. We kind of do. If you think of consciousness as being the one unified field, and that we've all got a consciousness, it's the same thing. So it's always there. And, you only got to go back to high school physics. Energy can never be created nor destroyed. It just transmutes in and out of form. To understand that it's always there. It was created in the Big Bang at that moment of inception, and it's always there. It's infinite. It's everywhere in the same place at the same time. So I guess in that way, definitely. But, this whole concept around longevity and stuff like that, certainly it's an area that's gaining interest, shall we say.
If we can go back to the ego, because that's sort of an interesting topic. We started off talking about the professional footballers and how deliberate practice and work is, the ego gets in the way of that, so to speak. We've all got one. And you can say that again, Paul.
I think that where the ego works really, really well. If you think about, I spoke about all these 400 billion bits of information coming into our subconscious mind, and the turmoil internally that must create at some subconscious level that we're unaware of. And I think it's our ego that keeps us away from that. It's our ego that convinces us that everything's running really smoothly, when in fact it's like a storm in there. Right? And it's our ego that gets us up and gets us out and does things and express certain things. But I think the problem is when we start to accept that our ego is us, right? That our ego is anything more than just a tool, that we start to have problems. You know, that our true self is one of calm, is one of peace, is one of alignment, is one of connection, right? Is one of service. And then when we start to become attached to stuff, when we start to believe that all this stuff around us and that we own and that we can get is who we are, when we wrap up our identity in that, that's when we have a problem with ego. And I can give you an absolutely stonewall example of that when I stopped playing football. You see, up until the time I had to quit playing football, I was Paul the footballer, Paul the professional goalkeeper, right? It gave me a degree of celebrity. It gave me more money than any of my friends had. It gave me some fame. It gave me some rather interesting experiences with some women who I would probably never have been able to get anywhere near if I had not been Paul the footballer. Here's the thing, when that was taken away from me, I wasn't Paul the footballer anymore. So my whole world went come crashing down because I associated myself with that ego role, as they say, right? And when I wasn't it anymore, the question was, well, who am I now? And that's the danger of ego. I think Joseph Campbell speaks about that a lot. You know, Joseph Campbell, who wrote Hero with 1,000 Faces. He was the guy that came up with this concept of the hero's journey, that is the one story, the monomyth, that we go through this journey in life. And everyone goes through the same journey in their own way. You know, the names and the locations may differ, but the story is the same. And, you know, the story of Harry Potter is a hero's journey. The story of Luke Skywalker is a hero's journey. The story of Anakin Skywalker is a hero's journey. The story of Jesus Christ is a hero's story, of Muhammad, of Buddha. They're all the one story. Right? And we go through these stories multiple times in our life. And, you know, we have to crash and burn as part of this story. We have to be tested. And when we come back, because the end of the story is you return to whence you started. You know, a great hero's journey. You know, my favorite book, one of my favorite books is The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. And it's a proper hero's journey because he wants his treasure. He goes off to find his treasure. And where does he find his treasure? He finds it when he returns home. And the moral of the story is that the journey is an internal one. Yeah. It's an internal journey, right?
And it's a short book. It's a short book, and it can be it can be a very short journey.
It can be, and you know, if you love listening to books, get it on Audible because it's read by Jeremy Irons, and it's absolutely sublime. He does a brilliant job with it. It's really good.
I might just get that then.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's basically what I try and encourage my clients to go on, their own hero's journey, right? So we spoke about your doctors and your medical professionals, you're suffering from burnout, right? But, you know, understand that the universe is made of two opposing forces, yin and yang, right? The positive and the negative, and they both have to work for the life to work, right? Look at a battery terminal. You've got a positive terminal and a negative terminal. If you only had a positive terminal, the battery wouldn't work. So life is infused with positive and negative, and that's what makes the hero's journey so wonderful. When you let go of the ego's desire to own everything and take everything so personally, you actually realize that actually life can be fun. It's a game, and you can play it however you want, right? And you can change any time you want. You really can. And you can change the way you work in the situation you're in. You can change anything. If you're in a relationship that's failing, you can change it like that, should you choose. You just need to know one or two things, one or two truths.
In terms of change, because change is very difficult, is it the ego that stops us from changing?
I think the ego. I think fear as well. People are told from a very early age that don't do that, you shouldn't do that, you mustn't do that. And then they're graded at school, we're going to do some exams, we're going to take some SATs exams, you either pass or you fail. And I think it leads us down this road that if I try to do something, there's a risk I can fail. And I think that lesson is so badly judged. You know, for me, I spend a lifetime showing people they're not failures, showing people that success and failure are points of view, perspectives, that someone's success is another man's failure, and that those that are successful by any definition of the word have failed probably more times than other people have even tried, and that it's just feedback. You know, if you're overweight, you haven't failed, you're just getting feedback that you're overweight. You know, it's just a measurement. You know, it's metrics. You know, metrics are great, but they're not the be all and end all. They're just a measurement. You know, so I think that this whole concept around failure and fear and resistance, that resistance that we feel whenever we try something new, I think as I said earlier, you know, it's practice. The only way you get better at dealing with it is to deal with it. Take the action. Once, you know, we're very, very good at building things up in our minds, right? So for instance, you know, we'll have this disagreement with someone and we won't deal with it. We won't have that conversation. One of the big things about having good relationships is the ability to have difficult conversations when you need to have them from a place of kindness, right? And we avoid it because we don't want to feel the pain that we upset someone else or we get upset. So we'd rather avoid it. But what that does is it makes it bigger in our minds because we're not like other animals, you know, who have stress and then release the stress. Like if you think of the antelope, you know, eating, grazing, and it sees a cheetah, the only thing on its mind is getting away, right? It's going to go. If it survives, 15 minutes later, it's grazing again. The stress is forgotten. What we do is we replay it. We're like the antelope that keeps, oh my God, I can't believe I only got eaten by that cheetah. What was I thinking? What was I doing? You know, we have these stress all the time. You know, and that's when the problems are caused. And we need to be able to say, well, that's okay. You know, it's fine. Done. The cheetah's gone.
Eject. Press the eject button.
Yeah. And that's why, you know, meditation, that's why being present, that's why mindfulness, that's why, you know, getting out in nature and grounding yourself on the floor, that's why exercise are all such very, very good things to consider doing because they bring you back to self. They bring you back to that place where the stress is gone. You know?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a great fan of the subconscious. I think that's where the magic is, and it's still something that's, as you said, fearful, or people are reluctant to go into that area. I mean, you know, doing hypnosis for a few years, it has taught me the power of the subconscious,
for sure,
and the power of allowing the ego to do its thing, and yet still be present with the ego being there.
You know, I love the Bhagavad Gita's explanation of attachment, right? So in the Bhagavad Gita, it speaks of detachment. Detachment is not owning things. Detachment is not having things own you, right? So you can have a house, you can have a car, you can have a nice clothes. But if you wrap your identity up in having the nicer car than anyone else, if you wrap your identity up in having the bigger house than anyone else, then you've got an ego problem. Right? But if you can have a car and just enjoy the car for what it is, a car, right? It's just a car. You know, you're only going to have it for a certain amount of time, then someone else is going to own it. You're a temporary custodian at best. You're not the owner of anything. You don't own anything.
So we have this ego, which we are temporary custodians of, and we can observe it and enjoy its fruits.
Absolutely, yeah.
And
without being attached to it, you know, if you get attached to things being a certain way, as soon as you say certain way, fixed mindset, ego rises, shut down all possible outcomes, problems.
Yep, no changes, and then essentially all the problems that arise in our world is from this, mindset, which is quite. It's not a good word. I don't like the word mindset because it just sets your mind.
Yeah.
Mind freeing, I don't know, but definitely not mindset. It's just to
so again, it's a label, isn't it? It's just a label. It's just a label, you know. And given the context of what we're speaking, again, if you don't like it, then maybe have a look at what's causing you to not like it. It's just
I mean, I say it because I like to get a reaction from people.
You
know, watch them squirm.
Oh, we can have people squirming. Don't worry about it. We can have them squirming. But
even squirting as well, I guess.
Yeah, no, I agree. You know, and you know, we spoke about this, you know, right back earlier on. You know, that the footballers or the football club saying we do it this way because we've always done it this way. Well, does that mean it's right? What if it's wrong? What if you've been doing it the wrong way all this time?
Yeah. I mean, we've got so many ingrained bad things that go on in the medical profession, and it's just ingrained from such a young age, and it just gets perpetuated. And particularly if you have parents who are doctors, and grandparents who are doctors. I mean, what else do you know? This is the only way doctors work or think, or the ego's in control. But change happens slowly.
Yes, change does happen slowly, but it has to happen because, as they say, change is the universal way of expressing itself, right? Everything changes. Stars implode and spew out heavier elements, and they build planets and eventually lead to life if conditions allow. Yeah, change is everything.
So could it be that consciousness is change? That's where we find consciousness.
Yeah, I think it. Consciousness is. What I think is, I'm going to use the G word here, and I don't use it in any religious context, but it serves a purpose. So effectively, consciousness is God, right? So consciousness is the intelligence of the universe. So consciousness creates the universe, and then to experience its creation, it has to create itself in many different forms to understand itself and experience itself in different ways. So we interact with it in our 3D way, seeing what we see, but we see in a very narrow spectrum of light. A snake interacts with it in a different way, sees it in an infrared spectrum, so sees it differently. So all these creatures across the universe interact with it in a different way to give consciousness an experience of itself. That's what I think it's all about. And you see, the problem that we have in our experience of that is that we also have an ego, right, that gets in the way of the consciousness expressing itself fully. So we're scared of showing up. We're scared of putting ourselves out there. We're scared of saying up and saying, excuse me, I can do this, and I can do it really, really well, and I'm going to show you how. Because people want to stay small. They want to stay insecure. They want to stay fearful. They want to stay unknown. And I think that's where the problems occur. So, we get hooked up in these pre-programmed messages that we're given from birth that come from our parents and their parents' parents and so on and so forth. And they're just perpetuating. We've only got to look at all the troubles around the world. All the disagreements around the world aren't disagreements from today. They're disagreements from years and years ago, just repeated and repeated and repeated and repeated.
Ego equals stagnation.
Absolutely.
Consciousness equals change.
And growth, and expression. And it's going to take someone very, very brave, very, very smart to come along and say, enough. Like
Paul Webb, Mr. Paul Webb.
I'll do it.
Good man.
I'm not joking, I'll do it. I'll do it in my own little world. I'll do it as big as you want.
Cool. And tell us more about, quantum creating and you being a quantum mentor, because that's very, that's massive.
Well, so we spoke about the para coaching. So I have a coach. My coach, when I hired my coach earlier this year, they said that although you're doing really, really well, I want you to think bigger. It's time for you to think bigger. So the concepts I was teaching people, all that we've spoken about today, they want me to have them under one brand, one name, and just speak from that place all the time, because the message I have, the concepts I use, the results I'm getting are very, very valuable. So we because of my understanding of the quantum model of reality, because of my love of quantum physics, we decided to use quantum in the title. So quantum creating is actually the program I run, one of the programs I run, but the main program I run. Creating Real Magic is a free Facebook version of that. So most people that come into my world come into it via the Facebook group. So it's just a free Facebook challenge, which I run once a month for 14 days. And then they get introduced to the way that I interact with this quantum field. I have been called many times the quantum mentor, so I use that now. I use that when I introduce myself and stuff. And so it's all based around this understanding that you can use yourself, your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions, your words, your actions to create the life you want. That you can step into your full power with no ego and express yourself fully and impact yourself and the people around you. And that may be one more person, it may be 1 million more. But if I can help one person, I pretty much help everyone.
Amazing. I'm letting that sink in.
Thank you.
If we create the scenario of a middle-aged doctor going through that situation where they can't perform in their lives, and they're thinking of changing, but it's just too difficult for them.
Right.
What would you advise them? What would you say to them?
Well, the first thing I'd say is that true? Is that true? Is it true that it's too difficult? Can you think of any doctor who's gone through an awful lot in their lives that have managed to change their life? Or can you think of anyone, any individual in any area that's done it? Because if one person can do it, everyone can do it. So, look, my coaching, I'm very mindful, I'm very compassionate, I'm very loving, but I call it as it is, right? And if someone is going to bullshit me, I will call bullshit, right? And I will show anyone who comes to me and says, yeah, it's because look, I understand in the medical profession some of the concerns that people go through and some of the working conditions they have and all that. I don't know it all and I don't profess to know it all, but I have family members that are involved in the NHS and I have clients from the NHS, so I understand some of it. But the fact remains that I haven't met anyone yet who decides, and here's the really important distinction, who makes a decision to change who hasn't been able to. No one, right? And if you decide to commit to the process of change and do the work necessary to change, you will change. Because as soon as you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. Right? And that used to be spiritual mumbo jumbo, but now that is grounded in quantum theory.
Could you tell us more about that? Because I'm intrigued.
So years and years ago, one of the earliest and most famous quantum experiments was called the double slit experiment, where if you fire a subatomic particle, in this instance a photon, through a slit, and behind the slit you have photographic paper. As you fire each through the slit, you get a line behind the slit that corresponds with the slit on the photographic paper, right? Yeah. So it's like shooting a bullet through a hole, right? If you've got a slit and you shoot a bullet through it, you'll get a bullet hole on a piece of card behind it, right? If you have a double slit and you shoot individual photons through the two slits, you get two lines, right? What that shows you is that you have a particle, right? That the photon is expressing behavior as a particle, like a bullet, a piece of matter, right? But what happened was when they went to a double slit, they got a real shock because what they saw was a mishmash of strikes on the photographic paper behind, and not the pattern they thought they were going to get. They actually got an interference pattern. And an interference pattern is wave-like. So if you drop a pebble into a pond, you'll see ripples, okay, or wave. If you drop two pebbles in, they will interact with each other and create a sort of a pattern, right? This was the pattern that was happening behind this double slit. So when they were there and observing and thought they were going to get the bullet pattern of two stripes behind the double slits, that's what they got. When they weren't there, they got an interference pattern. And what this showed is that the observer, expecting a result, gets the result that they expect. And this was the first indication that what we look at changes what's going on.
Okay.
It's very famous quantum physics experiment called the double slit experiment. And there's been books written about it that explain it much, much better than I can. But fundamentally, what that means is at the quantum level, things are both energy and matter at the same time or at no time after all. Now, here's the thing. You remember that high school model of an atom with all the electrons orbiting around it? Well, that's the mechanistic Newtonian version of an atom. An atom actually looks like nothing. There's nothing there because it's things that flip in and out of existence. It doesn't exist as a solid thing. Right? So in the quantum world, as an observer, we collapse the wave function is what it's known as. So when we observe something, we bring it from the world of the formless into form based on the way we expect it to look. We collapse the wave function and we see it as matter.
So we bring everything into existence through our observation.
Yeah. Now that leads to a very interesting question, right? Are we creating the world in front of us, or does the world exist as it is? Right? I've spoken to quantum physicists about this, and quantum physicists will say, okay, the observer effect, because that's what it's called, works at the subatomic level, at the microscopic level. Now, this is at a very, very small level. To give you an idea of how small, if we took a strand of hair, I can't take a strand of our hair, I'm afraid, my friend, but if we got some nice big long hair, we took a strand of it and we looked at the width of this hair, it's incredibly thin. Right? You would fit 1 million carbon atoms across the width of this hair. That's how small it is. So I've had quantum physicists say to me, yes, but the observer effect, you see, only works at the microscopic level, not at the macroscopic level. To which my answer is, maybe, just maybe, we're not that good at observing. And maybe people like Muhammad, maybe people like Jesus, maybe people like Lao Tzu are much better at observing and so create this change immediately. To which the quantum physicist went, maybe, but that's off the record. So even in the quantum world, they're starting to debate whether we can actually affect it at the macroscopic level. In my experience, with the work I've done, I would say 100% yes. Both in my life and in life. I've seen too many people create what you could claim to be a miracle in their life. You know, they've pulled themselves out of bankruptcy and made $1 million the next year. They've changed their relationships in a blink of an eye. They've left their job, set up a business, and are doing exactly what they want to do around the world when they want to do it. I've seen so much stuff, health stuff, spontaneous remissions of diseases, all sorts of stuff, and you're just like thinking, yeah, this shit really works.
Miracles is amazing.
Miracles, yeah, I call it real magic because I like the term magic, so I call it creating real magic in my world. But yeah, miracles, they're miracles.
You know,
but it's quantum physics. It's exactly what it is. It's no mystery. If you can get yourself into a state where you're communicating with this quantum field of information, you bring the new information back, and it goes. There you go. You already have everything you need. Look, you talk about miracles, right? If you cut your finger, who heals the finger?
Yeah, it's yourself, essentially.
Yeah, right? So, and you have no doubt that cut, you get a paper cut on the top of your finger, it's painful for a couple of days, it might bleed a little bit, but after a couple of days, it's gone, right? You have no questions over your ability to heal that cut, so it happens. When things get a little bit bigger, a little bit more complex, we start to question them. And then what happens? We don't get better or they don't change. But if we have that level of faith, of knowing, as I call it, so I take people through 3 stages usually. They have the stage of doubt. I then take them through a suspension of disbelief into believing and then into knowing. Right? When you have that level of knowing at this big macroscopic level, that's when you create miracles or real magic in your life. So for your doctor, I would take him from doubt. I would have him suspend disbelief, just like when he goes and watches Star Wars at the cinema. You believe that there are really lightsabers having that fight. You suspend disbelief to do it, otherwise you wouldn't enjoy it, right? You then go into that belief. Okay, I believe this happens, but it's when you really know, when you really are, I have no doubt whatsoever. Every fibre of my body screams that this works, that this is the way it happens. When you come from that place, that's when you create real magic.
All through daily practice.
All through daily deliberate practice, yeah. Which you build into your... See, you can't go from where you are now to an Olympian level of commitment every single day. You have to work at it. You have to build it in. So where someone like me comes along, or any other coach that's worth their salt, they'll look at someone's lifestyle and say, okay, how much time can we give a day at your current rate to give you deliberate practice? It might be a minute. It might be a 2-minute meditation. You don't have to go on YouTube and put in 2-minute mindfulness meditation and then sit with the headphones on for 2 minutes. But if you can do it every single day, you create space, right? When you start to create space, you start to change the way your brain works. Right? When you start to change the way your brain works, you start to change your external experience. Right? And it starts very subtly and very slowly, but it's that deliberate practice every single day. The worst thing you can do. See, I got a bit of advice years ago. I used to play the saxophone in a band. And when I was taking a couple of saxophone lessons, the musician said to me, look, because he said, how much can you practice a day? And I went, an hour, 2 hours a day. He went, whoa, let me stop you there. Love your enthusiasm. Practice 10 to 15 minutes every single day. He said, because if you try and commit to an hour or two a day, you'll do 2 days, you'll stop for 3, you'll do another 1, you'll stop for a week. He said, do 10 to 15 minutes every day and do it every single day. He said, you'll get much better, much quicker. And that's true. It works in everything. Start slow, be deliberate, turn up every single day. Got a formula for your listeners there, right? This is the formula that I give everyone, right? Ingrain this on your mind, on your brain. Simplicity plus consistency equals success. Do simple things, do them consistently in the direction of your goals, and keep doing them every single day. And eventually you'll succeed. Simple.
Yeah. It's changing that absolute belief.
Absolutely. And that's where I normally start. So I normally take people out of their stressed environments. I get them to change their environment, even tidying up your living space or your office space, bringing in some flowers, changing the pictures on the wall, throwing up some different color paint. I don't care what it takes. Just change your environment. Get yourself out of the environment. Get out in nature. Get some fresh air. Put on the meditation for 2 minutes. Change what you're doing. Drive a different way to work. Brush your teeth with your left hand. Right? If you get up in the morning and drink coffee first thing, drink a glass of water before you have your coffee. Change what you do, because when you start doing different things, your brain starts firing in different ways.
Well, that's absolutely amazing. We've taken up a lot of your time today, and how can they get hold of you? What's the best way?
There's a couple of ways you can do it. You can look at the website, paulwebbcoaching.com. There is another website coming as well. I'm not sure exactly when that will be up, but that's thequantummentor.com. Cool. And I do a lot of work on Instagram under the name Paul Webb Coaching.
Excellent. It's been very fascinating. I think delving into the metaphysical and the subconscious and the quantum fields and everything that was previously thought of being woo-woo and unconventional is becoming much more mainstream, and
definitely
it's definitely mainstream in the coaching industry, but hopefully, well, it will happen in the conventional medical industry as well. I like to ask this question for all of my guests at the end. What's the naughtiest thing you've ever done, Paul?
Oh dear, where do you want to start? I'm a Battersea boy. Naughtiest thing I've ever done. That's the naughtiest thing I've ever done. Do you know one? I used to love riding motorbikes. Yeah. I used to love riding really fast motorbikes, and I had a Yamaha R1 once, and I was late coming back. I went on a Sunday ride out to Hastings, and I was late getting back, And this was a good few years ago now. And let's just say I played loose and easy with the speed limit and leave it at that. But that was very hairy.
That must have been super magical.
It was extremely magical, and I think I still got adrenaline rolling around my body some 15 years after doing it. But that was, I wasn't stopping for anyone, including the constabulary.
Excellent, Paul. Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to this installment of the Surgical Spirit podcast. For all the latest in the world of surgical spirit, don't forget to follow on Twitter at The Third Eye Doc and catch me on Facebook at the page The Third Eye Doctor. You can visit the website at www.thethirdeyedoctor.co.uk for more information on the work that I do. And please send us feedback and questions and suggestions for the podcast. It's always a pleasure to hear from you. I've been Dr. Haidar Al-Hakim, and I'll see you next time.